Hello again guys, I'm back, and as you know I recently did a couple of videos on the Chinese diesel heater, showing you guys how to set them up, what you get in the box, that kind of thing. What you saw in the intro just there was me using my mobile phone to turn on the heater, using GSM or SMS. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you where to get a GSM relay that's suitable for this project, how to modify your heater so that it will work with the GSM relay, and how to use it, the app on your phone, to send text messages very easily. So let's get started. Yeah, so little disclaimer first of all, I'm by no means an expert on electronics at all. I'm a mechanical engineer who just about gets by when it comes to electronic stuff, so there's a little disclaimer out of the way first. So first of all, what is GSM? Why would you want to do this? And how does it work? So basically, GSM stands for Global Systems for Communication, and that's basically the system on which all of our mobile phones work on. Certainly in the UK, and I'm pretty sure it's worldwide as well. But so a GSM Relay, which is what we've got here, is something that uses the GSM network for communications. So you see the aerial there. It has its own SIM card in here as well, and then it basically uses an input from an external device, so your mobile phone, to switch relays. That's basically all it does. You know, any kind of electrical system that you want to switch remotely, you can use one of these devices for. Now you can get, like with anything, you can get Chinese made GSM relays. You can buy them eBay, anywhere you like, quite cheaply. This one is made by a guy in the UK called James, and I'll link his website and his eBay shop in the description. But basically these are extremely well made. You can see, I don't know how well you can see on the pictures, but it's a really neat little PCB. Nice high quality components, and just, yeah, made in the UK. For me, I prefer buying from a UK supplier when I can. Obviously that's a bit contradictory as we're talking about Chinese diesel heaters, but yeah, as far as this stuff goes, I'm not very familiar with this kind of electronics and GSM stuff, so it was really good to have James on hand ready to give support if I need it. So as I mentioned before, this has a SIM card in there which has its own phone number. So once you know that phone number, you can store that in your phone and you know, as a contact for your heater basically. And then, so within this device, certain commands have been set up to allow you to send different text messages to achieve different outputs basically. You can do things like switch one relay for 1 second, or switch both relays for 2 seconds, or you can basically do whatever you want with it. And another good thing about this setup is that James has made it so you can set up an administrator, or basically a list of allowed numbers, so that if someone else happens to get the wrong number and dials this instead, or sends a text message to this instead, or, you know, perhaps somebody maliciously got hold of the number, they wouldn't be able to turn on your device or your heater without using the right mobile number. So basically, only your mobile number will work on this, or whoever's. If you want some more mobiles added to it, you can add, I think there's a list of up to 10 or so allowed mobile numbers. So another great thing about James's units is they come in these IP54 rated enclosures. So you can see this case has got a nice rubber seal in the lid there. I can screw that down nicely, and it's not going to get damp in there when it's in my nice damp Land Rover. So that's really good. And I don't think you get that with the Chinese variants. So the setup I used in the introduction video there is actually one of these very basic rotary type controllers that just has an on and off switch with a knob to control the temperature there. This was my first go at modifying one of these, and as I said before, I'm absolutely not an electrical engineer, or I don't claim to have any expertise with electronics, but even I was able to solder some wires onto these little switches. So I had to use my little multimeter to figure out which of the terminals on these switches we needed to connect our wires to. You can obviously, having watched this video, you can copy this if you've got the same type of controller. This is the rotary controller. But all I did was basically use my multimeter prongs here to go onto each to a combination of each terminals in succession, and press the button to see which one of them actually just bridges the connection. So you can see here with the button not pressed, there's like a very, very high resistance across these two terminals. As soon as I press the button, it goes to basically a clean connection. There's zero resistance, so that switch is controlling those two terminals. That's our off button there. And same again for the on button. Again, very high resistance there until I press the button, and we go to 0 ohms there again. So we know now that when those two connections are bridged, for the on button that'll turn it on, and again on the bottom it'll turn it off. So all I did was run some short leads, soldered to the connections. A little bit fiddly, especially for me with my shaky hands and dodgy soldering skills, but yeah, I managed to do it. And then just run a short lead, and then I'll just put a waterproof connector on the end here. You don't have to do that, you can connect directly, but I thought for ease of use it'd be nice to be able to disconnect it in the future. That's all there is to it. So then this is the other end of the plug, the female half of it, with the 4 wires at the end there. Then all you got to do is thread them into your enclosure there, and then wire them into the appropriate relays. So relay 1, relay 2. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you guys how to modify this type of controller, which is what a lot of people, it's probably the most common one out there, I'd say, the sort of rectangular LCD one. So one key difference between this type and the rotary type of controller is on this you've got one button that does the on and the off controls, and it basically depends how long you press it down for as to what function it does. So when you turn it on, you've got to hold it down for 1 second at least before it will switch on. And when you're turning off, you've got to hold it for about 5 seconds. So we're going to have to take that into account when we program the app on our phone to send the right text messages, so that we get the right switching duration. So don't know how closely you guys can see that, but these switches are extremely small. So the contacts on them are even smaller, and for me, who's not had any real soldering experience, it's quite difficult to get accurately. Yeah, it's a little bit fiddly. So to figure out which of the 4 terminals we actually want to solder our wires across, I need to use the little multimeter again. We can see that that's already a closed circuit there. So that kind of tells me that that's one line coming through. So you've got power on one side and I guess ground on the other side. So if we could do the same on the other side, top and bottom. Yeah, so again that's one line there, one trace. So if we do now across the switch, there we go, you can see that's an open circuit, so there's nothing between those two. So if I hold them on there and carefully press the button, so there you go, hopefully you can see that. Okay, so from that we know now that we can use either the bottom set of terminals or the top set of terminals for our 2 wires, which will be going to the relay. So let's get on with that. I think the best way to do this actually is going to be to do 1 wire on the bottom and 1 wire on the top on the other side, and then bring them out sideways and go around the side of the board and into the back. So we'll give that a go. there you go. Nowhere near perfect, but that should work, and it should fit into the case a lot better than the last one I tried. So yeah, let's give it a go. So there we go. I've got the 2 wires on my probes. I press the button, multimeter goes to 0, so we know these wires are working correctly. So again, just routing the wiring down to the other wires. Can stick a cable tie on it. I'm just trying to make sure these wires sit nice and flat to the back of the board there, so we don't have any issues when we put the case on. So there we go. Now, we'll put that back down there. Pop all our buttons in if I can find them, unless I've lost them all, have I? This one, no, this isn't the one I modified, it's a different one. Okay, so this one here, got the modified groove in it. We want to pop it down that way. Okay, click that in nicely. Make sure that your wires are sitting down nice and flat and not sitting on any of these pins. Check that your buttons are all in properly. Then we want to take our back case, get it the right way around so that your groove is facing where the wires are, and then it should just click roughly back into place. Once that's roughly clicked back in, we can pop our screws back in, which will hold it all together. Okay, so that's all back together again. We've got our wires coming out the bottom with the other wires for the main control plug. Before we go any further and put the screen back on again, we can now just check this on a heater to make sure that our connections are good in there and that everything's still working. So let's go and plug this back into the heater and I'll show you what we're going to do. So if these connections have been made correctly, all we should have to do is connect these 2 wires together, and that should turn the heater on. Which it does, that's good. And then again, to turn off, all we've got to do is hold it down for 5 seconds. There you go, switches to off mode. So now we know that these connections in here are good and that we can move on to the next step. So I've just stuck that front plastic cover on. It's actually got enough adhesive on there that you can just stick it back on carefully. What a lot of people don't know about these is if your screen like this one is brand new but it looks like it's got quite a few scratches on the screen there, there's actually, if you look carefully, a protective film on there, so you can peel that off and it looks a lot better. So there we go. Okay, so now we've got our unit back together again. We've tested that the wires are working, they're connected properly on there. Next thing I'm going to do is put a plug on the end. So only 2 cores this time, so going to be a 2-way plug, and I'm probably going to put some sheathing of some kind on the wires here just to protect them and make it look a little bit neater. So yeah, this is the stuff that I use normally. This is actually probably a bit big for just these 2 skinny wires, but it still neatens it up and protects it a bit. So we're going to use a bit of that with some heat shrink. These sealed connectors are basically a cheap copy of a super seal connector, which is made by a company called AMP. If you buy one of their connectors, a genuine one, like one decent sized connector, it's normally like, you know, £6 or £7 just for one connector with all the pins and seals and stuff. But you can get these entire kits with about 30 different connectors in there, and all the bits, and inexplicably some fuses for some reason. But yeah, this whole kit, £10 on Amazon Prime, so that's what I've been using, and they're really, really good for the money. This one. Really good connection there. So now all we need to do is wire the other half up, which is the GSM half. That's very simple. So I've cut another couple of lengths of wire, the same length, same colour. Pass them through the grommet. And we're going to use relay 1, sorry. So just pull yourself through a bit of slack. Twist the ends up nicely. Doesn't matter which way around you have them. But we want to use on this relay number 1, we want to use the closed and normally open terminals, not the normally closed. Okay, pull the slack back. My camera battery went flat for a little minute there, but we're back now. And as you can see, I have decided to change the. I basically decided to change the 2-pin plug for a 4-pin. The reason for that is it makes it a lot neater for wiring your power in to the into the GSM unit itself. So all I've done is added a couple more wires which go to the power down there. They come out through the same grommet, down through this wire, into the 4-pin connector. And the 2 wires that we connected originally to the relay in here pass through and go into the control unit as before. And then these 2 power wires are actually powering this unit, and that's going down to my power supply behind the bench. But in your vehicle, obviously, this will go to your battery. You'd fuse this and put it on a battery. So that's it basically. This plug here for your GSM unit plugs into there. Power, control panel plugs in as normal, and that's it. That's ready to go now. So when you get your GSM unit from James from GSM UK, you'll need to go onto his website and find the manual for your unit. He has them all on here, archived as PDFs. So for my version, I believe it's this one. And then in this manual, among a lot of other stuff about how to set it up, stuff about the IP rating there, how to mount it, how to access the case, etc, etc. So yeah, this basically is telling you what happened when you first power the unit up and how the status LEDs in there actually work and what they're showing you. Then it goes on to how to start up your GSM on there, all very simple. And then this is the most important part that I was going to show you. So this is a list of commands for this GSM unit. So number 1, you can see there RS1XX. Basically, that's telling relay 1 to turn on for a number of seconds. So if you replace the XX with a number of seconds, so for example, RS101 would turn on that relay for 1 second. RS102 would turn that relay on for 2 seconds, example. Other things you can do, R1 on, we'll just turn relay 1 on and hold it. R1, R2 on, exactly same for relay 2. And there's a few other commands on there as well. When you first get your unit, the most important thing you've got to do really is set up the security feature so that you're the only person that can actually access the unit, because otherwise anybody who knows the number will basically be able to access the unit and potentially turn on and off your devices, which wouldn't be very good. Yeah, so inside the unit there are two small switches. They basically need to be put into the setup switch needs to be put onto on, so that switch number 1 needs to be put onto on. You then call the unit from your phone, so you find the phone number which is on the lid of the unit, call the unit, it will reject your call, and then that yellow status LED in there will flash for 1 second. And that now means that you're the administrator for this unit. And then once you finish doing that, you put the setup switch back to 0. So once that security part is set up, you're then free to go and have a test with your heater. So if you open up a message with your heater, so put in the number that's supplied on top of the case, you can try it out by typing in RS101, and you need to make sure that the letters are uppercase, because it does make a difference. So hit send, let it go through, it takes a couple of seconds, and then click. You can see that worked. Heater's turned on, so that's all good. So we know that the message is getting through to the heater and it's responding to it. So then we go RS105, so that'll pulse it for 5 seconds. Here it clicked on there, and then off on there, and then the relay turns off again. So that heater will now go through its shutdown. So manually sending text messages to your heater is all fine and good, and it works very well. But to make it a bit easier, if you're on Android, there's a better way you can do it with an app. So if you head into the Play Store, find yourself an app called GSM Control by a publisher called Zoran, and this is free. So just install that. Once that's installed, open it up. And mine's actually saved some settings from last time I was in here, but basically it allows you to make buttons within your app that will let you send texts with one touch, basically, instead of having to type them in. So for this one, I've put the label as heater on. The message that it's going to send is RS101, and it's going to send it immediately when I do it. Also, you obviously need to put in your device name and phone number in there, which I'll obviously have to block out on this. Yeah, so once you set that up, you can then basically use this to automate the heater basically. So there you go. That one's for heater off again, RS202. Actually, in this one, it's going to have to be different. It's going to have to be RS105. Send immediately. Okay, so this works really well as well. I'll show you here now. One tap on there, we've got to allow it to access to send messages. And there you go, so that's turned on. And then again to turn off. There we go. So that works well as well, but there's actually an even better way you can use your phone to control your heater. So as you know, these heaters with this type of controller don't actually have a proper 7-day timer on there. So if you want to set it to come on in the morning, the only way you can do that is to set a delay in terms of 10 hours or 12 hours, which is okay for one night, but if you want it to come on in consecutive days, it doesn't really work very well. So I found an app that we can do this with using the GSM. So you'll find another app in the App Store called Do It Later. I'm sorry, this is an advert. Good. Okay, so when you get past the adverts, you can set up a task. So you want to set up a new message task, address it to your heater, and then basically in here is where you're going to put your message. So turning on RS101.
And then this is where it's going to ask you to when you want it repeated. So we can say we want it hourly, we want it daily, we want it on a weekday, we want it weekly, or specific days of the week, which is what I'm going to do. So we want it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So this is the days I'm going to go to work, so I want my heater defrosted. And we can specify when it's going to start. So I'll say next Monday. The time we want it to start at, an exact time or a time frame, so you can say between a certain amount of time, it will send it randomly, but we're going to say an exact time. Let's say 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll put in the evening there, but you get the idea. So you can, basically send the text, and it'll do that automatically, whether or not your phone is, whether or not you're looking at your phone or not, it'll basically send it. And then again, you'll need to set another one up to turn it off again. So set up another task, put the right command in, and put the right time in, and it'll basically automate your heater.